Namaste, time travelers. I'm Zach Edwards, your curry-powered chauffeur through history. And today we're traveling back to 600 to 300 BC. That's right, India is about to explode with big cities, big ideas, and one really big Macedonian with conquest issues. So buckle up. We've got 16 kingdoms, 2 brand new religions, Alexander the not-so-local, or great, as you might know him, and the first empire to stitch India together with taxes and roads and even a spy network. Let's roll. First, let's go to the Mahajan Appa. No, let me try this again. I butchered it. Let me try again.
Mahajan Badas.
The Mahajan Badas. The Mahajan Badas. I always forget that. But it also comes to the second urbanization. Now the 16 heavyweight kingdoms. Mahajanpada means great foothold of a tribe. Think of them as an Iron Age megastate. There was Magadha, then there was Kosala, then there was Avanti, and also Vatsya, and 12 equally ambitious cousins. They were all vying for power and expansion. This is after the large city-states had started to develop kingdoms in the northern India area. Now, as you see, I already have my map up, but this map shows you a little bit of India and what it entails, the country itself, up to Pakistan, which borders we will be talking about on on Thursday. Now, the political styles at this time was there were some monarchies. This was a Magadha. They had a king who loved a big, great coup. Then we had some Ghana, or republics. This is like Vaji League. Basically a senate with spears. Okay? Then there was the urban boom 2.0. That's right. The first one was way back, when we did the Indus Valley civilization and the urbanization, when they left the city and started to expand. Why they left, no one knows. I don't know. I was not there. You do not know. You weren't there. Not even the historians and archaeologists know. But with this urbanization, this urban boom, iron plows, from all the way to the Ganges, there was floodplains. And what did this mean? Plows and floodplains means rice bonanza, surplus grains, cities with punchy names like Rajagra and Kozambi. Now, we also, at the same time, we had coinage, silver punched marked coins. Imagine a pizza cutter making currency. That's right. So we had large currency that they would slice into pieces, and you get a corner, like a pizza cut, to exchange for certain things. Or you would sell 2 of them. You'd break them apart, and you'd have 2 pieces of pizza from that coin to buy something. Now, with this new type of currency also came new trade routes. More money exchanging hands. Silver, very, very important. Very precious as a metal. Now with this, you have the north to the south. This is called the Dakshin Apatha. Dakshin Apatha. And the east to the west, which was called, these are the ancient trade routes, Uttara Patha. So the upper path, Daksha Patha. Path. Okay. Now, ancient truck stops basically with increased instead of diesel. Sorry, not increased, incense instead of diesel. So you didn't fill your car up. You meditated with incense. Oh, I must take a break from telling you about this to tell you about something else very, very important. This was, well, the last 2 weeks, 10 days for sure. I was traveling. I went, me personally, Zach Edwards, traveled down to Peru to go see how the, not Peru, yes, Peru, to see how the Incas lived. There was much incense there, which is why it came to my mind. So this was another truck stop powered by incense, because there's incense everywhere in Peru. They, sometimes very potent, very, very strong smells. But what I brought back with me is a gift to all of you, all of my viewers. We will actually be doing a Peruvian or an Incan 10-day course. So you can see all the parts and pieces of Peru, all the major parts around Cusco, around Lake Titicaca, and also around Machu Picchu. So not all of Peru, not all of the Incan Empire, but much of it, and we will share that with you over the next 2 weeks. Now, in addition to this urban boom, also came new administrative muscle. Tax collectors. Going back to ancient India. Sorry for that little rant on the side. Going back to ancient India, then this urban boom of the Mahajan Appas, and the second urbanization, also came administrative muscle in the way of tax collectors, police, road inspectors, yes, that's right, an official who checked the weights so you don't get cheating on your lentils. No, so they check how heavy your carts are going on the roads, so they did not destroy the roads like we have today, where the semis pull in, they weigh them, make sure they are regulated, and then the semis take off. Same thing in India on their roads. Now, at the same time as this 16 heavyweights, the kingdoms, and the second urbanization, also something else very, very important. The spiritual plot twist. This is the reformers, or the religions reforming. They crashed with the Medic party. And then, all of a sudden, things began to change. Now, we know that Jainism, we talked about this back in China. Well, it came over to India, and it was founded by Mahavira. Now, he was the 24th Tirthankara, but their core cry was ahimsa, non-violence. They wanted non-violence everywhere. Now, their practice, this is what happened before. Their practice was extreme asceticism. So, calmness, complacency, pacifism. They also had a veggie diet. No meats. And it swept the path so bugs, yes, right, they swept their paths. Remember, I told you that. They took a broom in front of them so that no bug would be squashed by them walking around. So every bug would see tomorrow. At least that's what they claim. But you tell me what? If a mosquito lands on my neck and starts drinking, I will squash it. Sorry, this is why I do not practice Jainism. Okay, but also the ritual stance. Nope to Vedic sacrifices. No more. Caste system. But there's caste perks. And gold-plated fire altars. This is all part of Jainism. What about the other one that was very important? Non-Hindu. We will get to that in just a minute. Buddhism. Now, Buddhism, these both of these religions came from the time of Hinduism where it took over. But Jainism and Buddhism became very popular at the time as well. And actually, when we get to Ashoka the Great, you will learn more about how he actually turned Buddhism into the city-state. That's not the right word. Let me think. They turned it into the state religion. Now, Buddhism was started by Siddhartha Gautama. Basically, call me Buddha. That's his name. That's what the name that we gave him. But Siddhartha Gautama was his original name. Now, their core cry was Dakha. It's hear the fix. Here's the fix. As in, they're bringing the fix. Now, their practices was the middle path. No extremes. If you have extreme here and extreme here, you walk the middle path. 4 noble truths, 8-fold paths, meditation retreats without Wi-Fi. Okay, if you want to learn about Jainism or Buddhism, go back last week. Last week we talked about Buddhism, Jainism, and Hinduism. Now, the ritual stance, interesting enough, ditto on the Jainism. Keep your Brahmin fees, which are their religious spiritual leaders' fees, and let's talk ethics. Those were the two differences. Class perks, golden plated fire altar, and Buddhism was let's talk ethics. The punchline is both movements yelled less ritual, more compassion. And the subcontinent listened. They actually started to move towards Jainism and Buddhism. Now, especially the merchants, the women, and anyone tired of buying ghee for yet another sacrificed bonfire. So, all of this basically accumulated a lot of stress between these countries, the regions, and the religions. So because of this civil distress, another person came over. Yes, we talked about this. A Macedonian with some conquest issues. His name was Alexander. You may know him as Alexander the Great. In 326 BC, Alexander the Great crossed the Hindu Kush, the mountain range, with an army that was homesick and sunburned. They did not want to be there. Alexander the Great continued forward until his generals finally told him to stop. We need to go back. So they took what they had, added it to their empire, but did not go too far into India. Most of it stayed preserved. Now, certain faces during this time, including in India, were King Porus. You must look at our YouTube channel to listen to him tell his story. It is fascinating. Now, King Porus met Alexander at the Battle of Hydaspes. This was a river called Jhelum. Now, Porus rides a war elephant. Alexander counters with cavalry and a choreography of strategy into that area. The results, Alexander the Great wins, but is so impressed, he returned Porus' kingdom to him. So, pro tip, being 7 foot tall in armor earns you respect. So does being 7 foot tall. Yeah. Now, aftermath. What happened afterwards? Afterwards, when his generals made him leave, there was a power vacuum. Greek troops mutinied. at the Ganges River. Well, at the Ganges border. Basically the river. So no more rivers, boss. We're not crossing him. Alexander built a few cities in this area. Now again, it only goes partially in to India, but not all the way in to India. They were homesick. They wanted to go home. Alexander listened, finally. So, yeah, we'll just say he built a few cities named Alexandria, but with extra dust. And he left what was called, you remember this from earlier, satraps. Satraps babysat the area. They were governors over the certain areas. So Alexander the Great comes in, wins the war, and then leaves, leaving people in there to head the area, to control the area. And what happened with those areas? They would provide tribute to Macedonia and to Alexander the Great. Problem is, Alexander dies. He goes, whoop, and dies. Now, even though he's heading west, he dies en route. The impact, though, you have to hear this, opens up the Indo-Greek trade. Wine for cotton, and spices for more wine. Everybody cheer! Yeah! Okay, it introduces new coin art. So on the face of the coin, remember when they cut them to pieces, now they have Alexander the Great on their coin. Military jargon, lots of it. And the world's first cross-cultural curry recipes. I love me some good curry. Most importantly, though, it creates political chaos that ambitious locals quickly start to exploit. And that's when India takes back its power from Greece. This is where the Mauryan juggernauts come from, starting with Chandragupta. Chandragupta Maurya. Yes, Chandragupta Maurya is a king, one of the best known kings. Basically, he's the young outsider meets rock star strategist Shankriya, also known as Kautilya. There we go. Kautilya thinks the Sun Tzu. Remember Sun Tzu when we talked about him in China? Think Sun Tzu meets Machiavelli. Yes, but with a top knot. You know, top knot, the turbans, and they have a top knot right there. That's right. Okay, so using alliances, espionage, and some oops, did your king just fall off his throne moments, they toppled the Nanda Dynasty in Magadha. Now, you may not understand some of these words, but just to know, there is much espionage and killing and conflict in India at this time, about 321 BC. Now, the capital is, now I will butcher this, so I will pause and get you a full understanding of the name. 1 second. The capital was Pataliputra. Here, I'll let you hear this.
Pataliputra.
Pataliputra. That was the capital city at the time. Now, what does it mean? What was Pataliputra known for? It was moated. It was walled. And buzzing like Silicon Valley with elephants. Many, many elephants around that area. Now, this is basically what ended up after all this conflict. Now let's go to the Arthashastra. Arthashastra. Okay, let me get you a better pronunciation than I can do. because I'm not good at this. Okay, I was right. Arthahastra is the name. But let me give you a pronunciation by someone else. The Arthahastra, or the Sanskrit book. One second. Let me let you hear this. Okay, listen up.
Arthashastra is how it is said in English. Arthashastra, locally. Arthashastra.
Arthashastra. Okay, there we go. We have the correct pronunciation. This was an ancient India playbook, authored or compiled, brought together by Chanakya. Chanakya. Oh, so many of these names. It's so hard to get these together. So don't worry about remembering the actual name. You can read about it in the book. But what this does is, this book, the Arthahastra, gives you taxation hacks. Basically, squeeze the goose, but don't kill it. Okay? It's how to get taxes without killing the goose. Spy networks. That's right. This is in here. Agents dressed as monks and merchants, and with some very strong ascetics, as in peace dwelling. Then economics. The book also tells about economics. Basically, state-run mines, forests, even brothels. Yes, the Mauryans taxed everything, from, again, their mines to their not so good retail stores, basically. Okay, moving on. Diplomacy, also formulas for the diplomacy. 6 circles of neighbors, allying with your enemies. Enemy. Simple, right? You want to ally with your enemies. Enemy. Okay, why is that so important? Well, it's how they lived. A lot of things were known back then that helped them to survive. Again, taxation hacks. Taxation. This was basically to fund the government that was in India. Then spy networks. That was a totalitarian network. Basically, where the government knew everything of what you were doing, because it had monks that were spies, merchants that were spies, and everyone that was spies. Even spiritual leaders were spies. They had them everywhere. So you had to be very careful of what you said and did. It also talked about the economics and taxing everything again. And also diplomacy. Remember, you want 6 circles of neighbors. You ally with your enemies. Enemy. Just hopefully they're not becoming your enemy. Now, another thing about this time. Okay, another thing about this time is the bureaucracy and economics. The economy. So, provinces run by Kamara, viceroys. These are royal relatives or people that ran the area, much like governors, but royal relatives. So the bureaucracy was basically run by the family. There were also roads with rest houses and wells and shade trees. Basically like an ancient drive-through. You drive through, you walk through, and you always are taken care of, whether it's a rest house or a well or some shade trees. So it was very nice to walk on these paths. And now these trade routes would connect, at least, remember what we talked about, the east to the west, would connect the Persians to the Chinese and everything in between, which means India. So also they standardized weights. So during the time of the Mauryans, we actually had standardized trade, gold, weights, measurements, and punch-marked coins. You know, you cut them apart and you give a piece of that coin to somebody. Scaling up from the Mahajanapa's prototype. So it started with the Mahajanapadas, and went up to the Mauryans. Okay, why does this matter? Why does all this matter? Well, first, this is the first empire to unify most of India. That is why it is so important. From Afghanistan up here, wait a second, where's my mouse? There it is. From Afghanistan all the way to the Bengals, like the Bangladesh. So all of this is now united because the Mauryans. That's why it is so important. Second, it sets a template for later dynasties. Strong center, the government, strong central government, regulated economy, trading, giving away, selling things, trading things, and the idea that ruling with 10% charisma and 90% paperwork does work. Yeah, that's what they claim. Not so much, huh? Okay, I would rather have 10% paperwork, 90% charisma, so much better. But would that put one person in charge of everything? Because that charisma would be coming from one person. The paperwork is what everyone else does. I don't even like a 50-50 split. I don't want all the power to go to a king, but I also don't want all the power to go to bureaucrats. This is why I love America and how it's actually devoted to democracy, where we vote. Now, we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional, because we have a constitution, republic, which means we have representatives, because I don't want to vote on everything. I would rather vote on the people who are representing me in Congress and the presidency. I wish the courts were a little bit more managed in the same way, except the courts are supposed to be running off the Constitution. So I guess the closest we can get to a really good system. Okay, but this paved the way for Ashoka. Remember I told you about this? This is Chandragupta's grandson, who flipped from conquest to compassion. But that's a tale for another episode, meaning on Thursday you will hear more about it. This whole episode may be a little confusing with all the major big words and such. All the Indian big words. We had the Mahajampadas. Remember, Mahajampadas turned India into a 16-player strategy game, spiked by urban growth and shiny coins. Mahajampadas. That is such an amazing name that I can actually say it now. Mahajapata. See, I messed up right there. Mahajanapatas. Yes, I did it. 16 kingdoms. That's what we talked about at the very beginning. Another thing we just talked about, and might have been a little confusing, but it all makes sense come Thursday. The dissatisfied citizens of Hinduism that worshipped Hinduism and found new paths such as Jainism and Buddhism, ditching the lavish rituals for compassion and mindfulness. So that was a great part about this period, is that they were able to have reforms and just go from Hindu, the one belief, to Jainism and Buddhism. But remember, all this conflict from Jainism and Buddhism came to Alexander the Great. And he came in, beat King Porus, but then bailed and put King Porus into rule, leaving a Greek ripple and a juicy power vacuum. That's right. When Alexander left, it was time for others to take control. And even though Alexander put up satraps, like governors over those areas, they were quickly overcome. And this opened the door for Chandragupta and Chanakya. Ooh, it's not what I wanted to do. There we go. Over here. Chanakya. Now, it's, again, hard words to understand. But Chandragupta and Chanakya pounced on this power vacuum. And they forged the Mauryan Empire, with including espionage, taxation, and a hefty Arthashastra. Hastra. Man, I almost had it. I had the other one. Okay. It is called, well,
Arthashastra is how it is said.
Arthashastra.
Arthashastra is how
Arthashastra. There we go. I had it right. Okay. Arthashastra. Rulebook. So, ancient India just graduated from city-states to super-states. And the stage is set for Ashoka's moral makeover, his silk routes, diplomacy, and the edict on stone pillars. But again, that is coming on Thursday, so continue to listen. I am Zach Edwards. Thank you for turning on the Adventure Box podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, though it was sometimes somewhat hard to understand with all these big Indian words, please leave a review. Give us your comments and questions. And also, next time, before we meet again, I want you to do an action item for me. Okay, this is the action item. If you were to be in power during India, talking about the Arthashastra rulebook, what would you have changed during the Mauryan Empire? Now, remember, they were a 10% charisma. The person in charge was not much in charge, but the bureaucrats were in charge. 90% was in charge. Or would you have it the other way around, where we don't want to have bureaucrats, had 10% bureaucrats, 90% authority, that's voted on at least? Or would you like some sort of mixture between the two? How would you like your government to be run? All elected officials? Non-elected officials? Or a mixture of both? Please, let me know. Put them in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you next time as we talk about Ashoka the Great and the eventual fall of the ancient India, let's see, with the Guptas and their fall. But that will be on Thursday. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.